Thank you guys so much for being here. Congratulations on the film. Timothy and I have the same taste in jackets.
I simply don't know what to do with myself. I should have phoned and said, "What are you wearing?"
So I want to start by asking all three of you, basically. I love a movie that's sort of a thought experiment and sort of speculative history, which a lot of history is. Was that the sort of initial, apart from the politics the film deals with, was the idea of just going into a place where you could sort of invent, you could break the rules and sort of invent the story that you wanted? Maybe starting with Colin and from the writing process.
I think any movie which deals with historical incidents is by nature a work of fiction. If it's not a documentary, it is a work of fiction because you weren't there. You don't want to replicate exactly what happened because history happens in real time and is quite boring. You want to make something that's going to be entertaining and will explain your subject in a way that audiences can appreciate.
Was this ever developed as a play, or
not yet?
Not yet.
And the musical, obviously.
Right. Yeah. But at Edison's, Nick, it is sort of, there's supporting characters, but it really is a two-hander. I mean, it's Colm and Colm Meaney and Timothy together. What were the challenges in terms of figuring out how to film this? Not in real time, but basically in about a day length of time, and making it cinematic and not feeling like a filmed play.
Hi, that was a lovely reception. It's really nice to see you all. It's great. It's a lovely audience. I think when we started off on this, we started with an idea. Like just literally an idea, because we knew these politicians sometimes traveled together when they went abroad, and we thought, well, that's a really interesting idea. These kind of mortal enemies, they would go on trips when they traveled to Westminster, and they would sit in the same plane, and then they would refuse to acknowledge each other when they got off the plane. And you think, oh God, this is 30 years of really fighting and struggling and killing each other, and yet you're on the plane ordering a whiskey together. It's sort of so it was a kind of the pretense of politics sometimes doesn't show the reality of politics. The reality of politics is these two guys, became real friends. They actually did something. It's not, yes, we fictionalized the story of what happened on the day of that event, but the reality is that these two guys formed a relationship, formed a friendship after hating each other, and probably McGuinness trying to kill him in several occasions. And that relationship opened the door for a peace process that was successful, And so when if you start making a movie about peace, you're automatically pulling out one of the necessary things, which is conflict. Most movies have conflict. So we thought, okay, so how do you do this? And then we found out about one particular journey that they took, which was the journey that's in this. And the actual reality of that journey was it all took place on the jet, all right, on the plane. But my God, you really can't make a movie on a private jet. I mean, that's just like literally.
Not without snakes.
Yeah. I mean, even us, we were like, oh Jesus, this is awful. What can you do? So we decided to put it in a car. And I remember Colin's first draft was we talked, and we tried to do too much, and then he came back with a second draft when we took everything extraneous out, and he basically concentrated the story with the two men. And it's sort of, that's what you lean into when you watch the movie. You watch the nuance of those actors behaving with each other. There's no big subplot. There's nobody being blown up. There's nothing else. It's just actors, actually, acting brilliantly, And in that sense, I just think that's the meat and drink of what we all do. That's what we love to watch. We love watching great actors do great work.
And one of the most primal storytelling conceits is the odd couple.
Well, it is the odd couple on wheels. I mean, it's like these two grumpy old guys in the back of a car. you know, who literally, they're not fantastically, they're really odd looking, both of them. They have sort of strange idiosyncratic things. I mean, look.
First the jacket, now the looks. I don't know what's going on.
How am I going to get home? The shame.
Look at the transformation of Tim. I just take you're all in this business. You all understand how this works. Look at him. He's 5'8". He's a southern London man. He's playing a 6'5" Irish politician. And was there 1 minute in the movie that you didn't believe that that's what he was? Not one. All right? And
so careful, you're putting on topic.
And so in that sense, but to answer your question really simply, we did it, we rehearsed it like a play. We rehearsed, they knew each other, and Colm and Tim were so brilliant because they come at it with such a high level. So we rehearsed it, and then we shot it in sort of order. And we built this incredible, like Mad Max, like mobile studio. We took over a freeway, shut it down, and we just went up and down the freeway. And I had the camera literally in the car and a mobile studio behind. And they did these very long takes. And because they could do long takes, when actors feel great with the material, as you all know, they thrive. Because they're not worried about it. They're playing off each other. And what you love in the movie is what everyone loves, which is the nuance of their behavior. And that's what you lean into.
Mm-hmm. Tim, let me involve you first by saying, in addition to my admiration for your jacket, I'm just a huge admirer of you as an actor for decades now. I mean, I've been... I can't think of how many
sweet of you, and
times
I'm genuinely touched by that. Thank you very much.
I've been moved to tears on many occasions, especially because of your work with Mike Leigh. But I'm curious about your history as an actor, which is always taking on complicated characters that could be almost considered villainous in some ways, or ugly, and finding the heart, within them. And I feel like with Ian Paisley, that had to have been a way in, this larger than life sort of titanic, controversial figure. Was that part of the appeal?
Well, I suppose it was. I mean, I have to say, I thought when Nick asked me to consider doing it, I thought it was a really preposterous idea. It was, ludicrous. I thought, well, that's got to be interesting. So anything that's that ludicrous, you think, well, I better have a go at that. But I'd also was familiar with the situation and grew up with it, not as directly as Colin. He's from Northern Ireland, lived there. I mean, but Ian Paisley was a very terrifying and loathed character, and was a media sort of bogeyman, was brought up as a person that was held up as the responsible, if not throwing petrol onto the flames of this thing. So I was intrigued by that. But like all, controversial, difficult, loathed characters, I'm instantly intrigued by the delicacy of their humanity. What is it that has made them like this? And what are the influences? And with my work with Mike Leigh, what you do is you go down to ground level and build up a character right from nowhere, and you build up. Or if it's a historical character, you meet that with material. And to me, I always start on the premise that it's a bit of a cliche, but the old saying, they were all babies once. We're all God's children, and we're all someone's son. And, there was one particular picture of Ian Paisley when he was about 14, and he's a big man, so he'd slightly grown about of his clothes, and his his pants were a bit short. He looked a bit awkward and a bit like a rather unpleasant adolescent boy that looked like he might have been bullied a bit. And I thought, there's this real fragility and vulnerability in him. And to me, if you can think about what people are like right before they've had any sophistication, any desire, any ego to feel that they are leaders or whatever their passions are. What are their fundamental human frailties? And then you build it up. And that, to me, everybody, even the most loathed creature in the world, has some kind of common humanity. I mean, long answer to a question, but that's always intrigued me, particularly by loathed characters.
Yeah.
Can I just add?
Of course.
Because I want to say something about, because this audience would appreciate this particular story. When Tim, I said, look, will you do this? No. I said, what do you mean? No, I don't want to do it. I don't want to play Paisley. He's a horrible man. I can't do it. I'm a small English guy. He's a huge Irish. And so I said, look, just but he was intrigued because the writing was brilliant, and he knew that, and Colin had written a brilliant script, and so we said, look, let's work out we'll do a rehearsal. We'll have a workshop for a half a day. We'll go to central London, and we'll work together, and we'll see. And if you don't like it at the end of that work, we're fine. You don't do the movie. So we went to a place called Spotlight. And Spotlight is, I don't know what the equivalent is in America. It's when all the actors have the book. Do you have the same thing? It's like a
casting book.
Like it's a casting book, so it's a central London office, but it's predominant, and they have some offices and they have some workshop space. So we were at the top of the workshop space, but it's mainly full of really young actors starting out in cattle calls, like really long, people are doing those horrible auditions that we all, And there's Tim and I working in one room, so we worked for a few hours, and it was great. And by the way, Tim turns up almost in character in a full suit, and he's fantastic, and he's literally God. This guy has to play this role. And we go downstairs, and we're standing in the foyer of Spotlight, and we're in the doorway, just like you and I were standing in the doorway. And because we're having this conversation, we're standing in the door, and Tim's opening the door to people who are coming through. And you can see all these 22, 21-year-old actors are going, Tim Spall just opened the door for me. And you can see in their eyes, oh my God, this business is terrible. This is what happens to you. I'm gonna die. This is a total failure. If Tim Spall is opening the door at Spotlight, what the hell is in it for me?
10 quid cash in hand a day.
Literally. And I watch their faces, and to this day, I know that there are so many actors in England who are 21 or 22 years old thinking that Tim Spall has a permanent job opening a door at Spotlight.
But what Nick hasn't added to that was that because he said to me after the for want of a better word, the session audition we were doing together, I did it, and I'd worked quite hard on thinking, how am I going to play? I kept saying to my wife, I can't do it, it's ridiculous. And she said, go back upstairs, you'll come. And then one day I did do something, and I thought, I'll have a conference, and I went in, and I did this long scene. He got a young actor, a lovely actor, and we did one of the big scenes together when he talks about his wife. And we finished, and we stopped, and there was a bit of a silence, and I said, what was that like? He said, well, Timmy, I'm sorry, but you're fucked. I thought, oh, thank God he's gonna say that it's not gonna work. I said, just before I said thank you, he said, you're doing it. You've got to do it. So, and then later on, when I was opening the door, I was trying to convince him that he was wrong. Yeah. That he was wrong. It was genuinely not me. But I thought, I can't, And all these young actors, A, thought I was the doorman, and B, were desperate coming in trying to get parts. And there I am, man in his late 50s, trying to tell a director he was completely wrong, that I should be playing the part. It was a very odd moment. But there we are. There we are.
Colin, I'm wondering, when you were writing it, were you thinking of actors, or were you thinking of the real people speaking the lines?
No, I think it's always dangerous to think of actors when you're writing something. So yeah, I was trying to concentrate on the real people, but I mean, you do all your research, and then you really have to throw it all out, and you're writing a play really, because it's two big characters, going at each other. So it's all to do with the writing at that stage.
Timothy, I was wondering to talk to you about the physical transformation especially the teeth. And how, like, in collaboration with the other guys, how far, there's a line you can go past when it becomes just caricature. You don't want to go that far. So how was that decided upon in terms of the makeup and in terms of the voice as well? I mean, you could study his voice, of course, but what kind of decisions were made in terms of the physical?
Well, on a practical term, we knew there was a height problem, so we could do that with the way Nick shot it, and then with some raised shoes. I had these shoes that we called my Marilyn Mansons. I mean, I'd be in this suit, and then I'd have these big platforms. It was quite a hideous sight, I'd imagine, but they worked. And then I had another pair of shoes that were raised up. But then I bleached my hair, and the only thing we went for was a small prosthetic chin, because he had Dr. Paisley had a head like a fridge, really. I mean, he's a big man he was. And then I got a set of pretty, should we say, character teeth myself, but they're pretty bad, but they weren't as bad as Dr. Paisley's, so we put them in. But it was more to do with, actors are here, It's not about, in a sense, it's about looking at the exterior of somebody, saying this is how they sound. We all know that an accent is only a mixture of consonants, vowel sound, and intonation, and there's a physical thing. But it's more to do with trying to just take that, listen to that, and then use that as the template of the exterior of the person. But where is that coming from? What is that? Where does that grow from the center? And you who are actors here know that when you trying to play somebody and you make this connection, it becomes a sort of private, emotional and a commune between you and the actor you're playing as to whether they're a demagogue or a swine or whatever, that you make this personal connection, that you start to feel like that person within. You can do as many exterior things as you like, but that's an impersonation. The connection then, in a bizarre way, I think I often found, for good or bad, that if you make that connection and you start doing that, you do your work and you remind yourself that you've got to get the vowels right, this connection starts to play itself. It starts to become about a commune between you and him. And obviously you've got to keep mindful of the technical side of it, but that's what it's about, a massive private empathy rather than a presentation. You're presenting it, but unless you have that connection, for good or bad, or whether it's convincing or not, I think that's the only real guide you can have to see whether you're on it or not. And that's what I try to feel like him, to massively have a sense of him rather than impersonate him. That's what I tried to do.
I want to ask a few questions from the audience that I have here, but before I do that, I just wanted to take a minute. Certainly, one of the most clever and affecting actors of all time, I think, was John Hurt, who was such a pleasure to see him. He passed away in January, and of course he has like 6 films coming out because he was working so tirelessly. Just to maybe have you guys speak for a minute about working with him and having him in the film.
Well, look, John, I knew John, everyone knew John was really ill. Like, and when you'll know how it works, it was sort of weird because when he read the script and he said, look, I really want to do this through his agent, and then it was all these massive arguments with the insurance and nonsense and well, is he going to die and all this stuff, and I just thought, this is bollocks. This guy has done such a has a huge amount of history in our business, and if he wants to do a part, then he should bloody well do the part, and so and so we sort of we really worked out that he could do most of his role within a short, and he basically stayed in a hotel like next to where we were shooting. And, he just wanted to say those speeches. He wanted to say those lines. And when you see John doing that stuff, and he walked onto the set on the first day and he said, do you know, dear boy, I've been on 100 film sets. And I just thought, wow, you are a historical figure in our landscape. You've done over 100 movie sets. And you know what? He was a bon vivant to the end, as Tim will testify. You know, he sat in the bar every night and had drinks with Van Morrison, and, you know, and he refused to acknowledge that he was even ill. And we put a wig on him. He didn't want to do it with a wig at the beginning. He said, I'm not going to use a wig. I said, you know what, John? I think you really should use a wig. It's not a good look. You know, I don't think the MI6 guys would actually do this. So, but he was, to the end, just a great trooper. And I'm really glad you said that. You know, he did, like, I think he worked right up to the last moment.
Yeah.
He literally, I think, almost died working. And I just think, you know, that says everything about the guy.
Totally.
I mean, to me, is my idea of the complete actor. You know, I mean, two things. I was so pleased to. I worked with him twice. Once in Harry Potter, and this. And but I remember I was about maybe 15, 16, and I was thinking about becoming an actor. I think it's probably an impossibility. And I was working in the post office. My dad was a postman, and I was working as what we call a Christmas casual. And it's pathetic, you know. I just sat around a post office pretending. Anyway, that's another story. But and The Naked Civil Servant was on. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Like Quentin Crisp. Yeah.
And I watched this, and I thought, that is the kind of actor I want to be. Somebody who can play somebody so flamboyant, so colourful, but right from the centre. And then the first time I actually, then he came when I was at RADA, he came and gave a speech where I was amazed by it. He was so great. And then just talked about acting, and he was so accessible. And then when we did Harry Potter, not so long ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I was on a set, and sometimes you get this as an actor. I was watching him do this scene. He only had about 5 lines. We all on it. Half of the British industry is in all of about 5 lines, you know. And I watched him think, and I watched him do this, you know, weird blue eye contact lenses in, and I thought, and he did something. I thought, my God, that is so good. And I thought, I can't do that. That is individual, and that to me, it was a privilege to work with him, and it's a great loss. But what a legacy he's left us.
Yeah, of course.
God rest his soul.
Nicely said. So there's a question here from what a handwriting. I'm not sure who it's from, but it's about, I guess, really for Timothy to begin, but also for all of you. Did you go into filming with an opinion about Paisley and an opinion, you know, obviously about the Troubles?
Well, in the process of reading up on it, my opinion, I mean, I was disabused of my ignorance, and I was, you know, astounded by the, you know, what had been achieved, but also, you know, what astounded me about the Northern Ireland subject is not only the factionalism between the opposing sides, but the opposition amongst the allies. I mean, the factionalism within the Church of Ireland and the politics within the right and the left-wing side of it is an amazing. It's the most tribal, factional place in the world. It's got to be one of them. It's a remark for a small country. There's so many factions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm from Northern Ireland, as is Nick, and I grew up sort of on the edge of the Troubles. Just, I mean, I live 10 miles from Belfast, so the Troubles were really focused in Belfast, but where I lived was like a nice seaside resort. So although we had maybe 3 or 4 bombs over 30 years, it didn't seem like very much. But living there, you know, you're just exposed to it all the time. And these are, you know, still 2 hugely divisive characters in Northern Ireland. You know, on the one hand, you can look at them as these, you know, wonderful peacemakers who brought this peace to Northern Ireland, and on the other extreme side, you could say these are, you know, 2 psychopaths with a retirement plan. You know, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, probably.
Well, okay. I thought that because Colin and I, we went and saw McGuinness before he died, before we shot the movie, right? So we drove down to Derry, and Colin and I, Protestants, so kind of a bit of a weird journey for us to go into the middle of Derry to meet McGuinness into the area called the Bogside, which I think 20 years ago, Colin and I would never have stepped in anywhere near. And but things have changed, and he was really erudite, very, very charming, very, very focused on what he was doing. He was very eloquent about his relationship with Paisley, and he talked about it. But he had the most penetrating eyes. He had the most penetrating stare I think I've ever seen in any human being, even Harvey Weinstein. I think he beat Harvey in the penetrating stare.
The stare out.
In the stare out. I would have loved to have seen a stare out between Harvey and McGuinness. I'm not sure who would have won it. But I think that there's a sense in which he had, and he talked about the IRA, he talked about decommissioning, his relationship with the British government, and he talked about his relationship with Paisley. And then we saw the Paisley family a couple of days later. Neither of them asked to see the script. I mean, neither of them, we never showed them the script. We never asked them. We never asked their permission. Never asked permission. If you ask permission, it's all you're dead. Yeah, literally. So, but you sort of have to get permission because you're shooting in Northern Ireland. You want to know your trucks are going to be there the next day. So, and then Paisley, we met him and the family, and they were great. I mean, they were really great, I have to say. And since the movie has come out, and since they've seen it, the families have seen it, and there was this incredible moment in Belfast about a month ago where we screened the film, the premiere of the movie over there, after screening it in Venice and Toronto, and we took it back to Belfast. And there was this incredible, sort of event because the audience was sort of split down the middle. And they had invited senior members of Sinn Féin and senior members of the DUP, and they came. And both sides came to this event. And there was one moment, I guess, that Tim and I guess, will always remember, which was one particular screening. I think it was 1,000 people saw it that night, but about 300 people in this one room saw it. And afterwards, we were doing a Q&A like this. And it's a real difference when you do a Q&A to an audience who actually went through this, all right? Because we didn't know. We were like, oh, my God, this was like really, oh, Jesus, I hope this is going to work. And people were really moved, very, very emotional about the movie. And then this one man just stood up and he started to talk about his sons. And the whole audience almost started to cry. It was like they broke down. And it was like, it was a realization that they had got somewhere. They had achieved something. And they were not shooting each other anymore. And here were the politicians in the middle of it. And you thought, these two guys are gone now. They're not there. Who is going to lead from the front? Who is going to do this now, right? And I think that screening will stay in, I guess, Tim and I's mind for the rest of our lives. I mean, I've done theatre and television and movies, but that screening was just extraordinary.
Do you want to talk about that, Tim?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was. You don't often get that, all my fears about stepping on the sensibilities and then that morning when we went to that, I went to see Baroness Paisley, Ian Paisley's wife, and got the sort of, I was always worried on a human level that I was going to upset her, but she was very kind. She didn't see it, and his son, who's an MP, her son, he was there, and he'd come out on the side and praised it and wrote an article that morning about how much he liked the film. But that was lovely, so I felt I'd laid a ghost there of fear. But that feeling, how many times do you actually do a film about an area where people have felt it? They swallowed the fictional side of it. They saw through that side of it because it was about them and it was about hope. It was about the future. And the other thing, just to add to that night after that, I went to a local studio and did a thing called The View, is it? The late night, which is a real top-end political show, discussion show. And I talked on that. I just played Ian Paisley to this split audience. And from that studio, we were staying in the Europa Hotel, which apart from anything has a reputation as being the most bombed hotel in Europe. I was staying in there and I walked, having been through that experience, seen that, done that interview, I said to the publicists, who were both political lobbyists as well as, I said, oh, I'll be all right walking back there. It's only around there. And they said, yeah, fine. So I walked back from the studio on my own through the streets of Belfast to the most bombed hotel. And thought, and the last time, one of the times I mean, was 30 years ago when you had to go for a fence, be frisked, and I thought things have changed. So there we are, and I think that film is a beacon of hope, adding to what nobody's got the stomach for it anymore, have they? You know, and that's what the film tries to capture. The stomach is not there. They've had enough.
Yeah. Actually, to that point, you know, in the screenplay, of course, and in the film, it pulls no punches in terms of what these two guys have said and have done in the past. But I'm curious, Nick, about the decision to include archival footage, which is real, or at least it looks like it sure is real, and the balance, how much of that to put in there, how violent, how graphic it was going to be.
You know, I think one of the most powerful things is just the beginning of the you know, I don't know you'll remember it, but there's the voices of those people just talking, and that was a complete accident. You know, we were just working, and I was listening to this stuff, and I thought, oh my God, rather than show all of these images again and again and again that everyone knows, just open the movie with some very simple statements from people. And I think the worst one is, you know, kill a Protestant, kill a Catholic, tit for tat. That's what it is. And it's sort of going, and I had to explain the movie to a non-Irish audience. If the movie was ever going to be anything other than a domestic film, it had to be, I had to put the context in. I had to show people, God, look, this is what was going on. I didn't want to overdo it because everyone over there knows it. So it was like, it's a good question because it was a very difficult balance to keep it really, really, really enough just to educate. And some people feel it's too much. I mean, I think one of the most powerful things is John Hurt's speech about 9/11 and how the world changed after that, you know. And it's sort of, you don't want too much because you're pulled out of it. And you don't want to do that, but you have to put enough in to the audience outside of the UK understands context. And so that was the balance.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, guys, I've been given the sign to wrap up, but I wanted to say, again, to just praise the film and just to, in praise of a thought experiment like this, you know, and I think I could almost imagine you two guys going on and doing, I don't know, Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn in the back of a car, or how about even like Angela Merkel and Trump together?
I'd like to give Angela a stab.
There you go.
Only if Tim pays Angela Merkel.
Yes, yes. Congratulations, guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.